let's give them some of the details about the building and how it was found and all the numbers on it and all the different plans we have. Because one of the interesting things in this is how many ways we had to make money with it. So let's take a look at that and show everybody. You're going to be so excited when you hear about this. It's going to be just fantastic. So check this out. We start out with an apartment building that had just been listed for $625,000. And what had happened was I was actually working on a property down the street, that 4929 Cedar Avenue property.
Yep.
And a realtor came by who knew one of my business partners, and he had seen us work in the neighborhood. And he said, "Hey, I've got an apartment building, just got listed at the corner." And he had just come back from getting the listing agreement signed. So it wasn't even on the MLS yet. The owner had literally just signed the listing agreement.
So we would call this a pocket listing. Because it was still in his pocket.
It's still in his pocket. It was so fresh, the ink was still wet.
Yep.
And so, of course, we took an immediate run down there to check it out, which is what you do, especially if it's only half a block away from where you're already working. And what we saw there was a solid building with no structural or water or fire damage issues. And it was a low price for the neighborhood. $625,000 was a really great price for that neighborhood. And, that's not enough to just get a low price, because you have to always evaluate your exit strategies. And we looked at 3 specific exit strategies, because one of the lessons you have to learn is that you need to know how you're going to make your profits before you ever get into the deal. Very, very important. You never get into a deal without knowing how you're going to profit on your way out. So we specifically looked at 3 different choices or ways to profit. The first was just a plain Jane apartment building you rent for a monthly profit with a positive cash flow, one option. The second thing we evaluated was flipping it as an apartment building for profit. And the third thing was to convert to condominiums and flip out individual units. And this is typically going to be your largest profit. And, of course, it's a one-time profit. Anytime you flip, that's a one-time deal and it's over.
Sure, that makes sense.
So first we evaluated the current situation. What you see there on your right-hand side is one of our flipper spreadsheets, or as we call it, the commercial deal analyzer spreadsheet. And what we did first was we looked to see what the current owner was likely making or not making on the building. And it looked like they were losing their shirts, basically. From our analysis, based on sort of normal costs of doing business, it looked like the owner was losing about $16,000 a year. And, it's not like magic. If we suddenly took over the building, that it would get better. Something's got to change to make it better. Now, the facts we knew were that the building was sound, but it was also just outdated and unattractive. I don't know if you remember, Ed, when we first got that building, it was kind of dog-eared and worn. Remember those little 60-watt light bulbs lighting up the hallways?
Yeah, it was tenement was the phrase I was kind of like searching for here. It was that building where you're like, ooh, man, who wants to live here?
Yeah.
It's just not very, just dingy.
That's a perfect word for it, dingy. Dingy was perfect. But it was a good building. It wasn't crooked and falling down. It was dingy. That's perfect. You had worn out carpets. Remember, it had these dark, greasy gray carpets. I assume they were dark gray when they were put in, but if not, they became that way with filth. And there were just bad lighting. I think one of the biggest differences between a modern building and an outdated building is the lighting. I think. Old buildings just have not enough light.
They have not enough light. They have paint that's faded and yellowed, and they have carpets that are dingy, and they're like a petri dish for bacteria. The building gets a whole feel to it, and that building had that feel.
Yeah, that was the feel to it. And one thing that we both noticed is that the neighborhood was strong for rentals and also for property sales.
Absolutely. Well, it's University City. It's University of Pennsylvania and Drexel University. Tons of students live in that area.
Yep.
They're happy in that area. A lot of professors. The University of Pennsylvania also provides stipends for the area where their professors can buy properties in the area and get a stipend from the University of Pennsylvania. Yeah,
and that area it's funny because that area had been coming up because UPenn had been putting money into the area. And I think this building was one of the holdovers. It was one of the old tenements with people that just weren't, very low income. an owner that didn't care very much about the building. The owner didn't maintain the buildings. It's just dingy and gross.
Yep.
So, after evaluating the situation, first you have to evaluate the physical building, which looked to us to be sound but outdated. And then you have to say, all right, how are the financials going to work? Because one option is, maybe they'll sell it to you for half, $300,000, and then all of a sudden it'll cash flow.
Yep.
We took a look online to see what kind of debt they had against the property, and we realized that wasn't going to happen because they owed more than that against the building. They had just bought the building 3 years prior, and they pretty much owed almost what they were asking for it. So the first question is, can we make the building cash flow? And the only way to do that, folks, is you've got to either increase income or decrease expenses, because otherwise you're going to lose money like the current owner. So, that's the only. So one, you can increase rents. That can only happen really if you make the building nicer to attract a tenant that's willing to pay more. Or secondly, you can save some money, decrease your expenses, get tenants to pay for the utilities and other services. And the idea is to turn this thing into a cash cow. That's the kind of cow you want, a cow that produces cash. And these apartment buildings can absolutely be cash cows.
Yes, they can.
But you have to. Something's got to change to get your cash cow producing its milk. So after we looked at it, we ran it through our analyzer spreadsheets, and lo and behold, we found that it can cash flow. And the way we found that is that rents at the modern apartments in the neighborhood were going for $1,150 per month. And there are ways to just research that, where you can easily find out what the rents are in your neighborhood. You can look at rentometer.com. You can look in the MLS. A realtor can do that for you. You can look on Craigslist, where I guess the vast majority of rentals are offered these days. And you can call and talk to local property managers. And what we determined is that in order to really improve the building, to separate out the utilities, improve the cosmetics, it was going to take about $15,000 per unit. And we had 12 units there. So we're talking about $180,000 to get it working. So we then updated the spreadsheet with our new numbers, and there it was, positive cash flow. So because our income increased, the old average income was $540 a month per apartment.